Hi, my name is Shauna, and today I'm going to show you how to make Funfetti Cupcakes. We're going to start with the batter, and once we get the cupcakes in the oven, I'll show you how to make the icing that goes on top, and we will pull them out of the oven and ice them together. So we're going to read through the instructions one thing at a time, but before we get started, make sure that you wash your hands and put your hair up if you have long hair. If you have your recipe printed, you're going to want to read through the whole thing before we get started. So we're going to start with number 1, which is just preheat your oven to 350. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Preheating my oven, and I've gone ahead and put my cupcake liners in the pan. So this recipe is going to make 12 cupcakes, so I've gone ahead and done that part as well. So it says preheat oven to 350, sift all-purpose flour and cake flour into a mixing bowl. So I do not have cake flour. I thought that maybe some of you at home would not have that also. If you have cake flour, go ahead and use it for the recipe. And if you don't, you're just gonna use the same amount of regular flour, all-purpose flour. So it says 3/4 cup of each. So I'm gonna actually put 1.5 cups of my all-purpose flour into the sifter. To measure our flour, we're going to use the spoon and level method. So I'm going to go ahead and spoon the flour into my cup, and then once it's full, I'm going to level it off. The reason that we do this is to make sure that our flour isn't pressed down into the cup too much. If you use too much flour, it's going to make your cupcakes dry. So this is a good way of knowing that you actually are getting the right amount of flour. So that was 1 cup, and now I'm going to add a 1/2 cup. So again, if you have the cake flour, you'll put 3/4 cup of the all-purpose flour and then 3/4 cup cake flour. But because I don't have that, it's going to be 1.5 cups of the all-purpose flour. I put it into a sifter. There's several different kinds of these, but we're gonna just make sure that we don't have any clumps of flour, and this will make our cupcakes nice and light. Okay, so next it says add baking powder and salt and whisk dry mixture. So we're gonna add our baking powder, and it says 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. Baking powder is a rising agent, so this is what's gonna make your cupcakes puff up. So we're gonna scoop and then level it off. 1.5. So that's our baking powder. And then for salt, it says 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So I'm gonna add that in. This will be our dry ingredients. There we go. And then I'm gonna grab a whisk and mix this together. So I'm just whisking these dry ingredients together to make sure that they're fully combined. And then I'm gonna set this to the side and grab another bowl to start my wet ingredients. And this is usually how it works when we're baking. We have dry ingredients in one bowl, and then we work with our wet ingredients in another bowl. So we're gonna blend together our butter. This one is actually a little bit softened. So we don't want it melted, and we don't want it straight out of the fridge. We want it to be softened or room temperature butter. So 1/2 cup is gonna be 1 stick. So we're putting 1 stick of our butter in. And then we're going to mix it. It says, in the bowl of an electric mixer fitted with the paddle attachment, whip together the butter and granulated sugar until pale and fluffy. So next goes in our sugar. So it's gonna be 3/4 cup. So we're gonna do 1/2 cup, and then we're gonna add a 1/4 cup. So we just want this to be nice and even. So it says to whip together the butter and granulated sugar until pale. So this is when I'm gonna use my hand mixer, and I'm going to whip this together until it's nice and fluffy. When you're using a hand mixer, you're going to want to press down and make sure that you're making contact with the blender to the bowl. If it's lifted too high, then you're not going to be able, or the stuff is going to be flying all over the room. You can make a huge mess. So you just want to make sure that you're pressing down while you're stirring. Okay, so once you've mixed that for a couple minutes, you're gonna add in your eggs. So it says 1 large egg. I have my eggs over here, and 2 egg whites. So we're gonna break a whole egg in there, and then I'll show you how to separate your eggs to just get the egg whites. Whenever I'm using eggs, I like to break over a separate small bowl so that if any eggshells get in there, I can fish them out before we add it to the actual ingredient bowl. So we're gonna add 1 whole egg. And now I'm gonna show you how to get just the white. So you're going to crack it. I'm going to stick my thumbs down in there and pull it apart. I'm gonna let that egg white fall down into the bowl, but I'm cradling the yolk in the other half here. So then I'm going to toss the yolk back into the other eggshell and let the rest of the egg white fall into the bowl. And then I'm gonna do that again. So I just go back and forth until I can tell that all of that egg white has fallen into the bowl. Okay. So I'm gonna do that with 2 eggs because it said 1 whole egg and 2 egg whites. So again, sticking my thumbs in, pulling it apart, letting the egg white fall, and then tossing the yolk back and forth until the egg white is completely out of the egg. Okay, so I'm gonna blend in that first egg, and then I'll add in the egg whites and blend some more. Okay, so when I'm blending, I'm putting it on like medium, high. After we blend our eggs in with our butter and sugar, we're gonna add in our vanilla and almond flavoring. So we have 1 teaspoon of vanilla and 1/4 teaspoon almond extract. So same thing with our flavorings. I'm going to measure over a bowl. If I'm measuring my vanilla over the actual bowl that I'm putting it in, if I overflow my teaspoon, then I'm getting more vanilla in my recipe than I need. So I wanna do it over a separate bowl so that if it overflows a little bit, it's just going into the bowl and not into my recipe. So here's 1 teaspoon vanilla, and then 1/4 teaspoon almond extract. And these 2 flavors together are just really delicious. You can really smell that almond extract. And then we're gonna blend it one more time. Okay, so it says working in 3 separate batches, beginning and ending with flour mixture. Add 1/3 of the flour mixture, alternating with half of the milk and mixing just until combined after each addition. So I'm gonna get my milk all measured out, and then I'm going to take turns putting in my dry ingredients and milk. Dry ingredients and milk as I'm blending. So I need 1/4 cup milk plus 3 tablespoons. Whenever you're measuring liquids, you're gonna wanna use a liquid measuring cup to make sure that you're getting the accurate amount. You want to measure down on the level of the actual measurements to make sure that you're seeing that you're getting the right amount. So that's 1/4 cup, and then I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons. I'm gonna double check that. Yes, 1/4 plus 3 tablespoons. And as you can see, I'm measuring over something separate. 1, 2, 3. now I'm gonna take turns putting in the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients. So I'm gonna put about 1/3 of this dry mixture. I'm gonna use a spatula and scrape down the sides just to make sure that I'm not missing any of those dry ingredients that might have got kind of sprayed onto our edges. But I do wanna be careful not to over mix when you're working with cakes or quick breads. You don't wanna over mix your ingredients. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and use a cookie scoop to spoon this mixture into our cupcake tin. Okay, so once you have combined all of your ingredients for your batter, you're going to measure out 1/4 cup of your rainbow sprinkles. So we're gonna put those into the batter, and then I'm going to use a clean spatula and just gently fold those in, making sure that they're evenly distributed before we put them into the cupcake liners. Okay, that looks good. So I'm just gonna use a cookie scoop. Mine is a medium to large cookie scoop. And I want the batter to fill up between 2/3 of the way to 3/4 of the way of the cupcake liner. You don't want it to go beyond that because once it bakes, it's going to expand and you don't want it coming over the sides. So make sure that it's not overly filled, but you do want to have it at least 2/3 of the way up, or else once it bakes, it's not going to fill up that cupcake liner. Okay, remember that earlier we set the temperature of the oven to 350, so that should be preheated. Now our cupcakes are ready to go in. So we're gonna set a timer. It says they should stay in the oven between 17 and 19 minutes. I always like to set my timer for a little bit earlier just in case my oven bakes a little bit hot. So I'm going to set my timer for 15 minutes and then start checking. While our cupcakes are in the oven, we're gonna start on our vanilla buttercream frosting. So we'll start with butter, and we need 1 cup of butter, which is 2 sticks. But we're going to divide it between some unsalted butter, mostly unsalted butter, and a little bit of salted butter. So we're gonna do 11 tablespoons of salted butter. So this would be 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 unsalted tablespoons. It's nice and soft, room temperature. And then we're gonna do 5 tablespoons of salted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another way of doing this is just using unsalted butter and just adding a little bit of salt, but often it doesn't mix in quite as well as using just a little bit of salted butter. So I'm gonna throw these into the bowl. Once I have my butter in the bowl, I'm gonna use my hand mixer and blend this for several minutes until it becomes kind of pale in color and light and fluffy. Now that our butter is blended, we're going to add in 3 cups of powdered sugar, 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of heavy cream, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Once we get it all in the bowl, we're just gonna blend it for about 2 to 3 minutes. It says 5 to 6 minutes on the recipe, and if you have the patience to do that, that's great. Otherwise, just mix it for a few minutes until you can tell that it's fully combined and has gotten kind of a nice, fluffy, whipped texture to it. Okay, my timer went off at 15 minutes. I could tell that they weren't quite ready, so I set it for another couple minutes. And now they look like they might be done. But to check, I'm gonna do the toothpick test. So I'm going to gently stick a toothpick into one of these center cupcakes. And if it comes out clean, see how there's no batter on the toothpick, then we're good to go. I'm gonna try a couple of them. There's little crumbs, but there's no batter. You can tell that it's cooked all the way through. So now I just need to let them cool. While my cupcakes are cooling, I'm gonna go ahead and fill my piping bag. So they come like this, and I wanna go ahead and stick my tip down into the tip of the piping bag, and then I'm gonna cut about 1 inch off the end of the bag, and then stick the tip through. I can tell that maybe I didn't cut quite enough because the bag is covering a little bit of the cracks in this tip. So I'm gonna push it back down, snip off just a tiny bit more. You want the full tip to be exposed. There we go. So now that it is exposed, I'm gonna put this in a glass. You can use a cup or a glass to fold over the edges. And then you're just gonna take a spoon, scoop up that icing, and then stick it into your icing bag. Push it down. And now I'm ready to frost my cupcakes. Okay, once your cupcakes have cooled, then you're ready to frost them. You do want to make sure that they're completely cooled because the icing is made of butter and it will melt on the cupcakes. So we're gonna do the first one with our piping tip that we have already filled our bag for. We're gonna start on the outside of the cupcake and put constant pressure on the top of the bag and move as I'm applying pressure, working towards the center. So starting on the outside, I'm squeezing and moving the whole time. There we go. I'll do one more of those, and then I'll show you a different way to do it. So again, I'm on the outside, I'm squeezing and moving the whole time, just moving a little bit towards the center with each swirl. Okay, so after you apply the icing, this is when you're gonna wanna put some more sprinkles on top. See? So I have some of these rainbow sprinkles to put on. You can see how pretty those turned out. But just in case some of you don't have the icing bags and icing tips at home, I wanna show you how you can do it with a cookie scoop. So I'm just using a medium cookie scoop. I'm gonna scoop the icing, place it in the middle of my cupcake, and then I'm going to use the back of a spoon to just swirl that icing around. This way doesn't look quite as refined, but it still is cute. And then we would just go ahead and put our sprinkles on top. So 2 different ways of icing, and they both turn out really cute. I hope you have a lot of fun with this project and enjoy your cupcakes.